Hold on for the ride of your life. It's 10 cents a ticket, the stories and glories of old amusement parks. There are a lot of ups and downs in the amusement park business. Parks rise, fall, and disappear. Some have been gone for so long they're like ghosts, appearing only in vintage postcards, dusty photo albums, property records, and history books. Others still survive in the hearts and minds of the people who lived, worked, and played there. Toledo has the most amusement parks. In the Maumee Bay, Presque Isle was perhaps the oldest. In the mid-1880s, men and women dressed in their Sunday finest rode lake steamers to the park for fun and relaxation. As the era of the lake steamer came to a close, the future of Presque Isle as an amusement park was sunk. It was abandoned in 1900. 5 years later, the Lake Erie Park and Casino opened on the spot where Bayview Park is today. The biggest attractions were the 1,200-foot boardwalk, a pleasure railway that offered more of a pleasant view than thrills, and of course the casino. A fire destroyed the first casino in 1907, which was rebuilt, but a second fire in 1910 was the end of that park. White City was located along Auburn Avenue near the Ottawa River and also opened in 1905. A franchise of sorts, there were many White City amusement parks across the country, all named for the electrically illuminated World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago in 1893. Unfortunately, the Great Depression took its toll, and White City grew dark by 1930. Back along the Maumee Bay, a new amusement park sprang up in 1929, costing nearly $500,000. Willow Beach was built on the site of what is called Cullen Park today. Considered small, its roller coaster and seaplane ride were landmarks, and the dance hall, later turned roller rink, kept the park going until 1948. The tragic death of a 17-year-old girl on a roller coaster shuttered Willow Beach permanently. What may very well be the most loved amusement park to ever operate in Toledo was Walbridge Park.
I grew up there. As a matter of fact, my mom was very upset with my dad for taking me on the roller coaster when I was like 6 weeks old. She was not happy with him. It was just a different existence, I guess. I remember doing my homework, sitting on the coach part of the merry-go-round, and I'd just sit there and do my math or my reading or whatever, and I'd just ride all day while I was doing it. The pretzel was like a fun house, but you rode in a car through this dark place, and ghosts would pop up and skeletons and whatever. So anyway, sometimes when I really didn't have a lot to do, I'd go in the back door into the dark place, and as people went by, I'd touch them or touch their hair or something, and you talk about screaming. They would really, well, the man who ran that could tell by the people coming out, they were practically in hysterics sometimes, and he'd stop the ride, he'd open the door, "Harriet, get out of there, you're scaring the people." And he told my dad then, and so I wasn't allowed to do that anymore, but it was really fun.
Harry Cavode is generally credited with building up Walbridge Park, although he was not the original owner.
He was a stickler as far as taking care of the children that came to the park. I mean, the men, if they ever came with any alcohol on their breath, they were done. I mean, they were fired. They were out of a job. He warned them when he hired them that he did not tolerate that. He did not tolerate any swearing. And I never, my whole life, ever heard him ever say a swear word.
Disaster strikes Walbridge Park in 1938.
Mom dropped me off at kindergarten, but we saw these black clouds in the sky, and of course she did not realize that it was the park.
Every major ride, with the exception of the merry-go-round, is in ruins. Neighbors protest rebuilding, and a spirited debate ensues, but in the end, Walbridge Park rises from the ashes.
They did not ever rebuild the roller coaster. They had an auto racing, little car, midget car racing set going in, and then they had a whip at the back towards the water, and in the middle was a bug, and they had a swan with a water pond, and then scooters way in the back.
Walbridge Park continued to be popular through the end of the Second World War. Then tragedy strikes again.
By the end of the 50s, things were really, really getting bad, and they decided to close. Times change, and you know, people's habits change, and so what are you going to do?
Though tiny in size, the last amusement park in Toledo was WBGU-TV Amusements at Monroe and Talmadge. It operated until the mid-60s. Earlier, some of the rides were on the opposite side of the street and called Kiddieland. There was also a Kiddieland on Conan Street in Maumee, just north of where a large Cineplex sits today. It ran from the early 50s to at least 1963, when this little fella had a lot of fun. Just outside of Genoa, about 8 miles from Toledo along Woodville Road, was Forest Park. It opened as a resort with cottages and a dance hall in the early 1930s. Later, many more attractions were added. It had a roller coaster named Speedway that was said to have been the largest in the area. By the mid-40s, however, gamblers had pushed out the families and fun seekers, and the park began to decay.
Vollmars Park. I remember going down to Vollmars Park when I was a kid. You hear this quite frequently. All you have to do is tell them where you live.
Originally the site of a fishing lodge, Vollmars Park dates back to the late 1800s. Charlie and Ella Vollmar saw potential and did what they could to attract more visitors. Only the most daring would brave the toboggan slide, which sent you on a furious trip into waters of the Maumee River. Harold Vollmar took over managing duties when his father died in 1927. The dance hall on the second floor was usually standing room only in the 1930s. Despite fun attractions, the park began showing its age by the 1960s as Harold Vollmar's health deteriorated. Then a new owner took over.
It's just something that we anticipated doing together, and the family worked with us. We couldn't have got along without.
Richard and Frances Hoffner bought the park and agreed to keep the Vollmar name. Their son Joe was to manage it, but a huge task faced them.
Well, when we bought it, it was a whole mess of old buildings that were wrecked out.
You just can't imagine what all had to be done.
The first month and a half, it was big bonfires down there getting rid of rubbish.
Vollmar's Park crept back to life.
Everybody had a job, no matter what. I mean, you was part of the family, you got a job.
Well, I started off when I was about 9 years old, walking off a poke stick in a pail, picking up garbage.
Me, I parked cars and did whatever else that needed to be done.
The day after I was engaged to their son, Bill, and I was invited to come down and work for 10,000 people and serve ice cream cones.
I worked down there from a little tot on up. I started picking up sticks.
I was too young to do the rides.
Had to be 16 to run the rides, and so we weren't quite 16.
And I was dating Bob at the time, so that's how I got in there.
Graduated from sticks up to straws.
Cooking the hamburgers and the hot dogs on the grills.
I started when I was finishing up high school.
And then poke stick and trash duty.
It was fun, real fun, watching the kids get big smiles on their faces and a few other comical things I don't want to mention on the camera, but...
We had a lot of competition between the ride operators. I probably shouldn't say what we were doing, but...
Yep, pop for big ride or big company picnic.
Walking ponies.
Mine was the octopus. That was my favorite ride to operate.
We would have small competitions between different rides, ones that would get the people sick the most, and you know, we'd keep tally of how many people we did get sick, and, you know, we'd have a running total of that at the end of the day and see who was the winner.
Or who can fill the black book by the end of the year. Getting all the girls' phone numbers and, you know, names.
I just worked all the way up. Mother's Day, every single year. That would be always the first day, and that was always a hectic day. If anything slightest went wrong, it was always the nieces and nephews. We was always in trouble.
Trouble also came from the Maumee River.
The big problem was you had a flood, cleaning up the mud.
I felt so sorry for Joe. He'd gone down there and he cleaned up the floor in the bottom of there. And it wasn't but the next day the same thing happened again, and he had to clean up the second time, and it was a mess.
Well, that one year we had the large flood, I think it was 80 electric motors out here in the shop, giving them a bath and all new bearings.
Vollmars continued to grow, adding rides and attractions. But in 1996, Joe Hoffner, who had worked so hard to make the park a success, passed away.
Things went downhill.
We knew it was time to end. We couldn't keep up, and a lot of families were not bringing their families down there anymore.
The insurance expenses were getting so high.
Well, it wasn't easy, but then we knew something had to be done.
Companies were going out of business, or there was downsizing, or they would just not have any picnic at all. That's mainly what our source of income was.
You know, circumstances are, things only last so long, and then that's it.
Vollmars Park faded into history at the end of the season in the year 2000.
We found fun in everything.
I enjoyed being down there. I really, in some ways, I miss it, really.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun down there.
I always told myself if you paid me just a couple of dollars more, I'd stay there for the rest of my life, because I enjoyed it so much.
Smaller was better back then.
Around 1900, Findlay was a fast-growing city. As the population exploded, the city government looked for ways to provide recreation. Land was purchased near the waterworks on the Blanchard River in 1902. More land was added, a dam constructed. Then on July 20th, 1906, Riverside Park was officially dedicated. Boats cruised leisurely up and down the river. A fine swim area and bathhouse greeted visitors. And what was called the world's longest Shoot the Chutes thrilled those brave enough to try it. A Ferris wheel and merry-go-round also graced the park, as did a huge auditorium that could seat 1,000. Later on, a dance pavilion and miniature train were added. But in 1977, the train departed, along with the other rides. Riverside Park became just a Riverside Park. Northeast of Findlay, in Arcadia, was the Sam Reeves Amusement Park, which opened in 1901. It was built by the Toledo, Fostoria, and Findlay Railway Company. A beautiful pavilion with billiards and bowling was the centerpiece of the 69-acre site. Golf, tennis, and baseball were the sporting activities of choice on the grounds. When other parks drew the crowds away, Reeves Park was reborn as Midway Park in 1922. Fires, the decline of the electric railways, and ownership changes led to history turning the page on Midway Park. Another trolley park, as they came to be called, was located in Bascom.
Meadowbrook started as a project from the Interurban Railroad. At Bascom was kind of the central point between Tiffin and Fostoria, so they established a power barn here. They would try to entice ridership on the weekends. And so they all had a picnic ground, a baseball diamond, because every town had a baseball team. And they'd play baseball in the afternoon, then they'd have a picnic, then they'd dance in the evening. This is actually the third dance hall that has been at the park. This particular building actually was built in '33, and I think it opened in '35. The first two burnt, and both times they burnt during Prohibition, so everybody has a theory as to who did it and why. There was a Ferris wheel here, there was a merry-go-round, with the old wood horses. There was a whip on a ride they called the Lindy Loop, which was a ride that went back and forth as well as around the track. There were airplane rides, little rides for kids. They also had inboard rides in the creek. We were one of the first large outdoor swimming pools in the state. The dance hall used to be a stop for the big band era. It was a dress-up affair. Meadowbrook kind of fell on hard times. Money became a problem. Today, we're kind of a family campground. The younger generation, they look at some of the old pictures that we have and they, oh, you know, I wish I was here then.
The Ohio Central Traction Company constructed Sequoia Park in 1899, halfway between the towns of Bucyrus and Galion. The unusual name was taken from a Wyandot Indian village that supposedly existed on or near the site. The park became a victim of its own success, as the electric railway had problems moving the throngs of visitors in a timely manner. Largely neglected by the owners, Sequoia went into decline until a man named R.A. Jolly leased and eventually purchased the park in 1925. Interest and attendance rebounded, but in 1948, lightning sparked a fire that destroyed nearly everything. Sequoia never reopened. The bustling city of Lima was home to 3 amusement parks in the last century. McCullough, now known as Schoonover Park, featured many things to lure people. The sand-bottom swimming area and a water toboggan slide were very popular. In 1928, a roller coaster called the Twister was built. The Great Depression and competition sent the park spiraling down. Once in ruins, it was purchased by T.R. Schoonover, who spent his own money to clean it up. He donated it to the city of Lima in 1937. James Macbeth purchased 46 acres in 1889, but it wasn't until 1901 that an amusement park opened on the site. Rides included a roller coaster and carousel. There were also rowboats for rent, a roller skating rink, and bowling to attract crowds. It became known as the White City at Macbeth's Park, due to the layers of brilliant white paint that coated the buildings, fences, and tree trunks. By 1914, though, customers sought out bigger amusement parks further away, as the interurban lines connected to more cities. The land was leased to a variety of users over the years, but now homes of the 10 Hills housing development have sprung up on the grounds of what once was Macbeth Park. Hover Park first opened as an amusement park on June 1, 1908. 45,000 people rode the interurbans to attend the festivities. There was a roller skating rink, a theater, a dance hall, a figure-8 roller coaster, and a miniature train. Boating proved to be very popular too, but like nearly every other amusement park of the era, it soon lost its luster. The rides and concessions faded away. Hover Park returned to a pleasant place for recreation, but not for amusement. South of Lima in Russell's Point, Ohio, Sandy Beach Amusement Park was built on the shore of Indian Lake.
Well, the park opened on Decoration Day of 1924. The Menawawa Dance Pavilion was the anchor of the park, but it had all kind of rides. Most any kid that wanted to work worked in the park.
And they must not have had garbage cans back then, because they had a little wooden fence, a little area behind the hot dog stand. And when they cleaned off the tables, they just threw everything over that fence.
I actually was best friends and all summer long with Carol Caulfield, who had Caulfield's Candy that both Perry and...
Well, my job was to clean that up.
She had us away candy.
They had those mirrored balls that rotated with colored lights. I worked those lights when I was 12 and 13.
Didn't get paid for it.
The next year I got a job down on the level, dance floor level, right close to the band.
She would give us a nice hunk of candy that she would take right off of the pulley, which is nice and warm and delicious.
Of course, that's where all the young people were back then, so it made it more enjoyable too.
My father was the drummer for the floor show, and they had all the chorus girls there.
We did it for the joy of doing it and, you know, just being up there and enjoying the park.
My dad would take me to the rehearsals in the afternoon, and I liked it so much that I learned every dance they did.
If you work in the park, you got freebies.
I can remember going up and getting on the roller coaster.
The thing you'd hear constantly was a roller coaster and a girl screaming on the roller coaster.
The young guy that was running the coasters that kept saying, "You want another ride, you want another ride?" I think I went around about 15 or 16 times.
Why they have to scream all the time, I don't know. I guess that's something they have to live with. Well, we have to live with it too, don't we?
I went on the roller coaster just one time, and we got clear to the top, and I said, "This is it," and I clumb out. And they helped me down. They stopped the roller coaster.
A big attraction for teenagers and adults were the dance halls.
There was all kind of people that met their wives and husbands there. I just come home on leave from the Army, and I went to the dance hall. She was tall, gorgeous blonde. So I asked her to dance, and she said yes. They sold tickets for each dance, 5 cents. And then when I got to the booth, I realized I hadn't put my wallet in my pants. So I had to go over and confess that I didn't have any money or no tickets. Her story is that I'll give this guy a nickel and then I'll be rid of him. And my story is that she gave me a quarter and told me to get 5.
The end of the amusement park was not typical.
The youth of the day decided that Russell's Point was the place to commit mayhem on the 4th of July.
Of course, that started an exodus away from the lake by families.
I guess they called the National Guard at one time.
I think we were all very much afraid. I think all of the town people locked their kids up at night, and you just knew to stay away.
People stopped coming. The remnants of the rides crumbled. The dance hall floorboards warped.
It was just sad. It was hard to see.
Yes, I was saddened.
Sandy Beach seemed different from the rest for some reason.
Every place you go, and I've lived in several states and Canada, every place you go, somebody knows something about Indian Lake. And that's exciting.
To the west of Indian Lake were 2 amusement parks on Grand Lake St. Mary's. Gordon State Park opened in 1924. It was a popular amusement park that featured a variety of rides and a dance hall. Its life was cut short, according to a local historian, by 2 fires, 1 tornado, and the Great Depression. By the mid-1930s, it was gone. Edgewater Park in Salina was first established in 1899. Although initially successful, it ended up being offered at a sheriff's sale in 1937, like many troubled properties during the Depression era.
My grandmother was known to buy properties because they owned a lot of properties in the area. She went to the courthouse to buy a house that she was interested in and ended up buying Edgewater Park.
Times being what they were, the cottages in the park became homes for some.
I was born in Edgewater Park.
There were probably only 5 or 6 of us born out there in the 20s and 30s.
The story is that I would take my naps on the merry-go-round.
They had a nice little midway there with a merry-go-round and a shooting gallery and high strike.
Yeah, they had little rides for real little tiny kids.
It's a wonderful spot.
Back then, that was really something. Nowadays, it would be nothing.
I sold tickets for the rides.
We kids all worked, had jobs out there.
Robert Riley ran the merry-go-round, and he knew we didn't have much money, and he always let us ride free.
And then there was a fella came and put one of these little booths to take pictures, you know. Well, I ran that. The last summer he was there, I kept seeing this cute little gal getting her picture taken, and I finally got out and found out where she lived and found her on the tennis court, and I stole her tennis racket from her. And I let her chase me all over town, and we ended up in the ballpark. And I said I'd give her her tennis racket back if she'd give me a kiss. So she kissed me. We went together 6 years and been married 60 years.
By far, the most memories of Edgewater are related to the dance hall.
When I was about 14, I started going to Edgewater dances, you know.
That's where all the teenagers went.
People were really happy when they were going to the dances.
I was the rope boy.
Well, we kids from the park pulled ropes.
I roped the people off of the floor.
Once in a while, a guy'd have some gal he didn't want to get off the floor, so he'd give us a nickel, let him stay out there.
These high school girls would come around and ask me to dance because I could dance for nothing. I was rather short, and as I danced with them, my hand was way up on their shoulder, and I had to hold their arm out like this and look under their arm to be able to see where I was going. It was hot and stuffy sometimes.
And there was no air conditioning, and all the flaps were up on the pavilion.
And there was screening that went up, but I don't know why it didn't go all the way up and closed up the whole window, but there was a space at the top, and I and a friend more than once would crawl in over the top.
It was always Sunday that the big bands came through.
Hearing those bands out to Edgewater Park really inspired me.
I'd get on my bike and I would rush out to the dance area, the whole area, and I'd help them unload the bus.
I never missed a dance that I could. I borrowed money and sold pop bottles to get money.
When I was 16, I went to see Satchmo Armstrong.
My dad gave Louis Armstrong a kiss on the cheek because he was such a renowned fellow and an outgoing personality.
And I had to sneak in.
It was just fantastic.
Boy, that really thrilled the daylights out of me. Those were such good days, you know, with all the good music, the beautiful words and everything, and people all dressed up. I still sometimes think and even dream about Edgewater Park, what a good era that was in our lives, you know. And you've heard people say this before about being the best time of their lives. Well, boy, that was the best time of anybody's life.
Nothing lasts forever. By the early 60s, the merry-go-round, last of the major rides, was sold off.
At one time in its day, it was really a big thing. And then it just kind of gradually dwindled.
Edgewater Amusement Park, like so many others, left people with great memories and made those of us who will never have a chance to go a little jealous. Maybe it's best to remember that the places where we have fun today will be our golden memories tomorrow.